Welcome to this week's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. I'm your host, Amelia Borland, occupational therapist, owner, and founder of Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And I am here today to give you two super valuable tips. The first one for caregivers and the second one for caregiving organizations. And I've got two big ones here today. These are so foundationally important. Put down whatever you're doing, listen up. You're going to want to pay attention to these two tips and really, really think about them and think about how they're affecting, for caregivers, your experience and the experience of the person that you are caring for, and for organizations, how this is deep down affecting how your organization runs. So big ones. Okay, so buckle up, Buttercup. Here we go. Before we get started, though, please do keep in mind that this information is for education purposes only. It is not a substitute for health or medical advice or a therapeutic relationship. So if anything that I say reminds you of someone that you think needs to be seen, assessed, or treated by a licensed healthcare provider, then please make sure you're advocating for that person to be seen, treated. Whoa, this is what happens sometimes. I'll call him back. By that, let me back up. Make sure you are advocating for that person to be seen, treated, etc. by that correct healthcare provider, as this is really and truly for educational purposes only. Okay, so let's jump right in. Tip number one for caregivers. This is specifically, I've been talking the last couple of weeks about caring for folks who have dementia, and this is another tip for caregivers of people with dementia. And this really applies whether you are a family. Oh my goodness, I'm all of a sudden very, very popular. I promise I'll call them back. This applies whether you are a family caregiver or you are a professional caregiver. It really doesn't matter either way. But so I want to start off by talking about, it is often frustrating to be a caregiver regardless. It can be a difficult experience. It can be particularly frustrating for people who are caring for those who have dementia for a variety of reasons, right? But one of the most frustrating things for many caregivers is the feeling that the person that you're caring for is having behavioral issues, or they're not trying, or they're just not listening to you, right? And I think that something that's so important to understand is that when people have dementia and it's affecting so many different areas of their brain, it is a disease, or it's a series of diseases of the brain. So it can really affect almost any area of functioning because your brain is the motherboard, right? It controls everything. It's so important to keep in mind that the symptoms that that person has are not within their control, right? They're caused by underlying changes to their brain. So, the best example of this would be memory, right? A lot of times caregivers can feel frustration, they can feel grief, they can feel all kinds of things about the fact that the person that they're caring for, maybe a loved one or someone that they're caring for professionally, can no longer recall certain things. And so it's a really natural thing for many family caregivers to do, in particular, to try and get their loved one to keep remembering. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there's no amount of effort that person who has dementia can put in that's going to fix the underlying issue in their brain, that's going to allow them to remember, or that's going to allow them to control their impulses, or that's going to allow them to pay attention to more than one thing at once. These issues are caused by underlying changes in the brain. And so it's really important for caregivers to understand that in order to help decrease the level of frustration that you're having as a caregiver, understanding that the behavior the behaviors or the symptoms or the responses of the person that you're caring for are not based on their level of effort. They're not based on their level of motivation. They're not based on their level of desire or underlying character. It's really changes that they cannot help that are caused by the underlying changes in their brain from the form of dementia that they have. And although knowing that will not change the symptoms or the issues that you might be dealing with as a caregiver, understanding that it is not a personal intent of the person being cared for can really be helpful to ease some of that underlying frustration and anxiety, and also help us to understand that because it's not within the capacity of the person that we're caring for to correct these things, we then need to think about the external strategies, skills, knowledge, things that we can put into place in order to help that person be more successful. And there are strategies, skills, etc. Of course, this is only 10-minute Tip Tuesday, so we don't have time to go into all of those things now. But so that was my tip for caregivers for today. Just really understanding that what you're seeing from the person who has dementia is not intentional. It's based on that disease process. And thinking about how your behavior, your intentions, what you do as the person providing care, how that can help to support the person in a way that is less frustrating for you and less frustrating for them, with that understanding that what they're doing is not intentional, or the problems that they're having that they're showing are not intentional. Okay, so yeah, so that's tip number 1 for today. Tip number 2, moving on, for caregiving organizations, I promised super, super foundational for y'all as well, and it really is. So a lot of times I will have owners of caregiving organizations who might be frustrated because they're just having a really hard time, retaining caregivers, or having not even just caregivers, just having staff that are really aligned with what the values of the organization are. And so my first question for those people is always, and so this is my tip for today, how are you communicating those values, that mission, that culture right from the get-go? Because it does start right from the beginning, from the first point of contact that you ever have with the person that you're trying to bring into your organization. Even going back to the job posting itself, how does all of that communication communicate those values, that culture, that mission? And then how do you continue to reinforce it through the whole process? Because we have to be intentional about that if we want to bring people into our organizations who are going to be a good fit for those organizations, who are going to share those values, who are going to be a great part of that underlying culture. So that's a quick one, but a really, really big one to be thinking about for caregiving organizations this week. All right, y'all, that is it for me. Make sure you are looking out for the next 10-minute Tip Tuesday. As I said, September is just crazy. It's crazy. So while I usually do this at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time every Tuesday, it's a bit all over the place right now. So make sure that you are following me, subscribing, etc. Whatever you need to do in order to make sure you are getting notified when the next 10-minute Tip Tuesday drops, so that you get that valuable information. All right, guys, until next time, please stay healthy, stay well, and most importantly, always take care. Bye, y'all.